Hi, this is Christine Baker from Fairfield Road Designs, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about using setting triangles and squares to make a border. So you'll notice when you have a pattern and it asks you to cut squares and triangles for setting triangles, that the setting triangle always looks like it's too big for the square. And the reason for this is because you need to have a little extra fabric at this end to give your seam allowance on the side of the border. If it wasn't there, then you might end up sewing over top of the tips of your squares. So when you go to attach the setting triangle to the square, you want to line up the one edge of the triangle with the edge of the square and let the other tip hang over. Once they're sewn together, then you've got it like this. You're going to press the seams towards the triangle, and this long edge is all even, and you have this little tip that hangs over. When you put your second setting triangle on, you're going to have it so that the tip hangs over on the other end. And the reason for this is because we are assembling the border on a diagonal. So you're not making horizontal rows, you're making diagonal rows. So this is one row, this is another row, this is another row, and then we add them together. So when you have your little sections made, they end up looking like this, and you've got this little edge on this side, which will be the one side of the border, and this little edge on this side, which is the other side of the border for your seam allowances. Now, when you go to sew your sections together, you have to offset them so that when you turn them sideways, then you've got a nice long border. So when you sew this section to the green section, you'll see that we want those little edges to butt up together, and that makes it so that when you sew them together, your seam will be perfect, and you've got that nice edge, nice square tips, and they match right up. So you just keep assembling your border by adding those sections on and on until it's the right length. Now you'll notice at the ends that it's not square, and you want your border to end up being square. So the very end piece has to be sewn a little bit differently. So you start the same way. You've got your square and your one triangle that you sew together, and you've got a piece that looks like this. Okay, so now the little tip, so this is going to be this end of the border. So you need to have a triangle here and a triangle here to make it square. So the smaller setting triangles in your pattern will be attached on this way. So we're going to put this first one on here, and this setting triangle you actually center to the square. So you're going to take and you're going to make it so that you've got an even amount hanging over on either side, and then you're going to sew it like that. So you see this little tip and this little tip are even. So you're going to sew that together, and then you end up with a piece that looks like this with little ends hanging over on either side. And that's okay, it's the same thing. It's the seam allowance for the end of the border. And then the last little piece you're going to put on, you're going to center onto that side, and you're going to have it hanging over the same amount on either end. So you've got the same amount hanging here as over here, and then when you sew those together, you end up with the square end. Now that end will get sewn onto the end of your border, and there it is. That's how your border ends up being square on either end. So I hope that helps. I hope to take away a little bit of the frustration that happens when sewing setting triangles. Now when you're done your whole border, you end up with a border that looks like this, and that edge is actually a bit bigger than a 1/4 inch. You'll see it's almost a 1/2 inch. But what we're going to do is take the rotary cutter ruler, we're going to line it up with a 1/4 inch on the ruler, and then trim off the excess, so that when I go to sew this border onto my bed runner, then these little squares will be perfectly lined up with the edge. So thanks for joining me today, and I hope that helps. Thanks, bye.